Hello everybody and welcome back. In this tip, I'm going to be showing you how to build a starburst chart. Sometimes it's also called a circular timeline, and it can be called a sunburst chart. Actually, I don't really know what the official name is, so let's go with starburst chart for this example. I'm going to show you how to build it as a single chart, like you see here, and I'm also going to show you how to build it as a series of small multiples. Now don't worry, all the calculations that I am using in this video, I'll put in the description. That way you just need to copy and paste them to build your visualization. For those of you that are new here, my name's Andy. I'm the founder of VizWiz.com and the Dual Axis podcast. I created this channel to help you become great at Tableau. Let's get started. The first thing we want to do is connect to data. I'm going to click on Connect to Data, and I'm going to navigate to my Superstore dataset. Choose the dataset, and then click on Open. Now, in order to be able to draw the lines, I need to have a start point and an end point. To do that, I need to union the data to itself. So I'm going to drag on a new union. And in this union, I'm going to drag in orders, and I'm going to drag in orders again. Click on OK. If I scroll all the way to the right in this table, you'll see I have this column called table name. When I look at the aliases for that, notice we have one called orders, and we have one called orders 1. That's because we have the same data set in there twice. And it's very important to remember which one is which for our calculations. Let's go to our new sheet. We're going to now build a series of calculations. And again, these are all going to be in the notes. The first one I'm going to create, I'm going to call radial field. And this is simply the absolute value of whatever metric you want to use. For our example, we're going to do the absolute value of sales and click on OK. Our second calculation we need to make is actually a parameter. So I'm going to create a new parameter and I'm going to call this to.adjuster. I'm going to leave it as a floating data type and I'm going to start the current value at 10. We're going to need to adjust this later so that our first date is at the 12 o'clock position. Let's click on OK. The next calculation we're going to create, we're going to call radial angle. In this calculation, I'm just going to paste in the calculation. Let's move on to our next calculation. This is actually going to be a parameter as well. I'm going to call this one 4.radial inner. Leave that as a floating data type, and I'm just going to start with the default as 1. Let's create another parameter, and we're going to call this one 5.radial outer. And let's start this one at 2. The radial inner and the radial outer parameters allow us to control the size of this circle that's in the middle of all of the lines. Let's click on OK. The next calculation we're going to create, we're going to call radial length. So this is going to be the length of the line. And we're going to paste in my calculation. Let's keep going. Calculation number 7, we're going to call radial x. Let's paste in our calculation. Another calculated field, and let's call this one 8 radial y. And paste in our calculation. Now let's build our view. We want to drag radial x onto the columns and radial y onto the rows. We want to put the measure that we want to color the lines by onto the color shelf. So let's drag sales onto color. We want to create a line for each individual month. So I'm going to right click on order date, drag it to the detail shelf, and I'm going to pick continuous months. I'm going to change my mark type from automatic to a line, and I'm going to drag my table name field to the path. So this is the field that was created when we joined the data sets together. We're almost done. Now we just need to configure the view. Go up to our radial X, click the little drop down, choose compute using, and order date. On the radial Y, let's click compute using and order date. And now you see we have a bit of a spiral. I'm going to go ahead and show all 3 of my parameters. Now the adjuster allows us to control where the starting point is within the view. If I go to 12 o'clock, you'll see that it's October of 2020. Now, if I look around the view, I'll find January of 2019 down here at the bottom. I need to use my adjuster to spin this view so that January gets up to the top. To make it easier for me to see where January of 2019 is, I'm going to click on it here in the view so that it's highlighted. So now, as I change my adjuster, I can see where it moves. So if I make it 20, I can see it move to the right. If I make it 35, we'll see it's close to the top. How about 37? There we go. So now January of 2019 is at the top. And if I go around the view, you'll see that it's sequential around the view all the way until we get to the end, which is December of 2022. Perfect. From here, it's a bit of formatting to get rid of the grid lines, hide the axes, and fix the tooltips. But what if we want to build this as a series of small multiples? Let's say we want to have one of these spirals for each individual region. Now I need to create two calculations to split it up into that trellis view. I'm going to create a new calculated field. I'm going to call this one 9.columns, and I'm going to paste in my calculation. Click on OK. Let's create another calculated field. Let's call this one 10.rows, and paste in our calculation there. Let's click on OK. And we need to make both the rows and the columns calculations we just built discrete. So highlight them both, right click, and choose Convert to Discrete. I'm going to drag row to the rows and column to the columns. Now I want to split up the view by region. So I'm going to drag region to the detail shelf. And I need to make sure region is above the month on the detail shelf. Let's now configure our columns and our rows. Let's click on the drop down, choose Edit Table Calculation, Specific Dimensions. I want to choose month and region, drag region up to the top, and I want to do it at the level region. For the rows, I want to do the same thing. I'm going to choose Edit Table Calculation, Specific Dimensions, month and region, and drag region above month. Let's do it at the level region. And now you can see we have one view for each region. We need to make a couple more adjustments to our radial X and our radial Y. In our radial X calculation, click on the triangle and choose Edit Table Calculation. Notice how we have nested calculations here at the top. We want to choose the one that says radial length. In the radial length, we want to check month and check region, keep them in that order, and then on the radial angle option, we want to just leave month as the only thing checked. Let's now edit the table calculation for our radial Y. And in my radial length, I want to check month and region. And now everything's configured properly. Let's hide the headers for the columns and the rows, the radial X, and the radial Y. Now we have really big circles. If I want to shrink that circle into the middle, I can adjust my radial outer. So let's say I make that a 4, and you'll see it brings the view into the middle. If I adjust my radial inner to 2, it moves it back out. So you can play around with these until you get the view that you like. The last thing I want to do is I want to stick a label in the middle for each region. To do that, I'm going to create a calculated field. Let's create a new calculated field, and I'm going to call it label. I only want it to appear for January of 2019 for only one of my tables. So I'm going to say if table name equals orders 1 and my month is equal to the first month in the entire data set. So I'm going to do that with the mustachio, min, drag in my month field, close off the mustachio. Then I want to return the region. End. Click on OK. Let's drag that to the label shelf, and we want to make it an attribute. I'm going to click on the label shelf, choose line ends, and we can see now we have all 4 marks, but they're not in the middle. So let's adjust this. Let's click on the font. Let's maybe make it 14 point. But they're still not quite in the center. Click on the 3 dots next to the text. In there, I'm going to move the label down to 1 line, maybe put a space on the first line, click on apply, and there we go. Now you might have to adjust the size of that space. It could be, maybe it needs to be 8-point font, 10-point font, something like that. But you play around with it until you get the view you like. So you've now learned how to build a starburst chart, also called a sunburst chart or a circular timeline. And you've learned how to do it both as a single chart as well as multiple charts in a trellis view. If you found this useful, please give it a like. And don't forget to click subscribe and also share it with someone else that you think might find it interesting. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave me a comment with your favorite weather emoji. Thanks for watching.